We just got the next to last episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts on the series Obi-Wan Kenobi, in particular episodes 4 and 5. This is a spoiler review, so feel free to spoil away down below in the comment section. If you haven't watched the episode yet, you have been warned. One quick announcement. This weekend, I will be at Dallas Fan Expo. Saturday at 2 o'clock, I'll be leading a panel on how to grow a nerdy YouTube channel. Once the panel is over with, I will be right next to the stage or right outside the door to meet and greet whoever wants to talk to me, wants to ask a question, wants to yell at me about something that I said in this video, or take a picture, all that fun stuff. Also, if you're just at the event and see me at any point in time throughout Dallas Fan Expo, feel free to walk up to me and say hello. I would love to meet you, and let's get started talking about the last 2 episodes of Kenobi. And let's just get right to it. Last week's episode really wasn't good. This week's episode, pretty cool. Bunch of stuff that I loved that I got to see. But as we kind of approach the final episode, it just feels like this show has a bunch of cool things that I'm glad that I'm getting to see. Vader, full rage mode. Kenobi in action again with Ewan McGregor playing him in live action. It's just really cool to get to see that. Nice to see some glimpses into young Leia. And live action Inquisitors, another thing. Nice to get to see. But it doesn't feel like there's a compelling enough story to drive a 6-episode series. As I'm sure you're well aware, this originally was going to be a movie, supposed to be like 2.5 hours long. Now it's turned into like 4 or 5 hour TV show. And I think you're kind of seeing the consequences of that. So what was wrong with last week's episode? I think that's the ultimate example of what went wrong in the conversion from movie to TV show. It just felt entirely like a filler episode that didn't need to be there. And it's some unbelievably bad execution in it. Some stuff I just couldn't believe that I was watching in Star Wars, that I was watching in something with a budget the size of this show that can do de-aging, but they can't figure out how to execute some of these sequences. But so as of last week's episode, it was episode 4, and that meant in 2 of the 4 episodes, Leia got kidnapped, and in 2 of the 4 episodes, she got rescued. Which, that's not good when you only have 6 episodes and you're repeating plot beats. And from there, what our rescue mission looked like was just kind of really generic Star Wars rescue stuff that we've seen many times before. It was overtly trying to like show us all this imagery and do homages to episode 4, A New Hope. You know, the microphone sitting on the table, the corridors, the sneaking around, all of it very A New Hope-esque. But also, this is like half the episodes of The Mandalorian. There's someone inside of that Imperial base. We got to go in there. There's a piece of information in that Imperial base. We got to sneak in there. And then there's a shootout at the end. And so it was just another one of those. There's a person in there that we got to get out. Except in the case of this show, we've already done this plot beat. That she was kidnapped and we have to save her again. Or she was kidnapped before, so we have to save her again. So the setup itself, a repeat of episode 2 of this show, and then the actual imagery of it, the setting. We've already done this in TV shows before. We've already done it in a movie before. We're just doing the same thing again. And you get like, maybe the thing that was fresh, different, new about it is that you got a bunch of Reva and Leia with the interrogation sequence, but I don't like either one of those characters. I don't think that they're particularly well written in this show. And so putting the 2 of them together doesn't really add a bunch of depth or layers that I'm all that interested in. So maybe it was some of the best stuff from Leia, some of the best stuff from Reva, but that still doesn't mean that I like the characters or that they're particularly good or compelling for me. It was just a lot of time with one of the things in the show that I find the least interesting. But what really killed this episode for me is some laughably bad execution. First piece of unbelievably bad execution, you have a sequence where Tala is surrounded by stormtroopers. She has to get out of there, and she escapes by like open hand slapping a stormtrooper with a helmet on that knocks him over. Like, it's just kind of like this kind of wimpy little thing, and she does this, and suddenly she's able to escape stormtroopers. And as I watched it, I like, the first time I watched it, I was like, that couldn't have really happened, right? Like, there was something more to that, right? So I rewound, it was like, no, that's how they had her escape. Like, that's the best they came up with. And this is followed shortly by, to escape this Imperial base that's so concerned with security that Tala shows up as a high-ranking officer with security clearance. Everyone is suspicious of her just because, why are you here? What's going on here? Like, they're suspicious of everything. Then Kenobi walks into a hangar with people everywhere. There's tons of people in this room wearing a trench coat, and he just puts Leia in the trench coat, closes it, and they walk through this hangar like that as their disguise. And I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was like the stupidest thing I'd ever seen in a show that's not a comedy. Like, this is overtly comedy level bad disguise in Star Wars. And I'm just thinking, like, just throw her in a droid. Just grab a trash droid, throw her in the trash droid, and so he's walking with a droid next to him, and then she pops out of the droid. Like, that's just me spitballing, coming up with something that makes more sense than two people walking in a trench coat that looks as bad as you would imagine it would look. I mean, I just couldn't believe really what I was watching when this stuff was happening. Then they're escaping, and Riva throws a container to blow up one of the ship, but doesn't do that to the other ship. I mean, just like all this stuff kind of keeps happening that you're like, why are they not doing this? How did this happen? They act shocked when the rebel kind of people act shocked when they go in to do this attack mission and one of them doesn't survive. It's clearly a suicide mission. Clearly you can't fly into a hangar filled with guns and troopers and stuff, survive. And then afterwards they're like, oh no, he died. I can't believe this. Really? What did you think was going to happen? You thought that you were expecting something else? Like, seemed like you would respond with something besides surprise, like sadness, of course, but not surprise. So I just like baffling. At the end of it, Vader is like mad at Reva, like, how could you let them escape? So I got a tracker on them. Of course, classic. There's always a tracker on there. But then I'm thinking, like, first off, when did Vader become forgiving? Second, didn't Vader just let Obi-Wan Kenobi escape? Like, he's right there. There's just a little fire, and Vader just like stands there because there's a little fire and doesn't like use force push to push the fire out of the way. Doesn't force pull Kenobi through. Doesn't force jump over it. Doesn't walk around the fire. He just lets him go. But now he's mad at Riva for the same thing. Like, what? I couldn't fathom how bad some of the writing was on last week's episode. So that brings us to this week's episode, where it was quite a bit better. It was a siege plot, so we've seen a siege as the next to last episode in one of these shows before. Season 1 Mandalorian, it's a siege episode. So we got another siege, and there's just a lot more that, on a plot level, it's one note, as most of these episodes of these Star Wars shows are. They're very, like, simple plot. Rescue the girl from Fortress. Survive the siege. They're like, find a way to escape the siege. So there's like that level of simplicity to it, but there's kind of a bunch of other stuff kind of happening in the episode that kind of made it compelling. The obvious one, flashbacks of Anakin and Obi-Wan training. Is it nice to see young Anakin doing the smile, doing the spinny lightsaber trick? Of course it is. Is there something like, we got to see that again. We got to see him again. They brought him back for a reason. Do you feel all the feels? Of course I felt all the feels. Of course that happened. It's nice that, technology allows things like that to happen in a more convincing way than, slapping a bunch of makeup on someone or something like that. Like, they can actually pull some of this stuff off in ways that's like, wow, that's really cool that they did that. Did I get the feels? Sure. Was it awesome when you get to see Vader in full-on rage mode, defeating someone in a lightsaber duel when he doesn't have a lightsaber, and doing callbacks to the flashbacks of, like, there's things that he learned from Obi-Wan. He's still applying it in this moment where he's battling Reva. Like I get nervous. Like, are they going to have Reva like actually compete competently against Vader? Is she going to like put him into place? Is something like that? No, that's not what happened. He just tears her to pieces. Was that cool to see him just force pausing her, tearing up weapons out of her hands and just destroy her, stopping his ship, ripping the door off in full rage mode? Was all that cool to see? Yeah, it was cool to see. Did it also at the same time feel like our writing here still has some of these just like big holes? Like there's this Imperial Star Destroyer above the planet. That's how Vader got there. They've got these Imperial forces. They're there to stop them. And our refugee people, they think as long as we can get the bay doors open, we can fly out of here with no problems. What am I missing here? Is there something they mentioned in the plot as to why all this ships, the Imperials wouldn't just blow them up? That aren't like they're actual warships. Even if they're small, they're warships, not transports. So what am I missing here that they can, if the hangar doors open, they can just leave? In Empire Strikes Back, when you wanted people to leave, you had to like use these ion cannons to like knock the ships out. So you have a brief window where you can cut through, jump to hyperspace real quick. There's a whole ground battle that made all this stuff happen. There's a bunch of layers to make it so that the ship could escape. Here, it's just, if you get the bay doors open, the only reason we can't escape is the bay doors. As long as the bay doors open, we can escape no problem. So I don't know what did they give a reason in the episode as to why they would just be able to fly off? If they did, that feels lazy. And if they didn't, that's obviously even lazier and crazy bad writing. But can they just leave? What am I missing here? And then even at the end, they're like, our Harper drive's out. Like, well, yeah, of course, something's a little bit off there. So once again, you can be caught by the Imperials very easily. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels like this show has these moments that are really cool. It's of course great to see Vader in rage mode. It's great to see prequel era Obi-Wan and Anakin having one more, training scene together. It's nice to see that. It's fun to see it. It just feels hollow, like empty. Feels like Obi-Wan is an afterthought in his own show. Like they're trying to give us some moments of him regaining his confidence, like he lost his force powers. He goes full Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2, like, oh, I don't have my powers anymore. I guess I've lost my way. I don't want to be the Jedi guy anymore. I'm afraid. And so he's like slowly regaining them. But it doesn't spend enough time on that. And it pauses to have these moments where it's like, look, he used his powers. He did it a little bit. My kids are having a screaming match. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but all three of my kids are just screaming in the stairwell right at the door. Threw me off a little bit. But like you have these moments where it's like he catches falling Leia and he stops the water from falling through. So it's trying to be like he's regaining his powers. He's becoming the hero again. But it's putting so little emphasis on him that all the moments fall flat for me. All the moments that feel like they should be the big hero moments, the big, yes, he's becoming Kenobi again. He's no longer old Ben, he's Kenobi, he's the hero again. But all of them, none of them hit the way I feel they should, because I don't feel like they're earned. It's not being explored. There's not enough of a journey and an arc for him. It's just, you kind of know what's supposed to be going on here. He's beaten up, depressed, PTSD, and he's kind of snapping out of it a little bit. But only a little bit, and not big enough to feel like the moments are earned. And it seems like that's the thing that really should have been the focus here. Of you have a broken down Kenobi because he failed. The world that he knew has collapsed. The people that he loved are dead. The person that it was his brother turned evil. So he's broken down, but he was still on mission. And so you show him regaining the hope. You tell a story that it explains how he's hopeful again and waiting for a new hope. Like that's what this focus should have been here. but it hasn't really done that. And I don't even feel like with one episode we can get back to that. Like the way that he acts, like, assuming this is the last time we're going to see Ewan McGregor in this role and they're not going to do a season 2 and we're not going to tell a bunch of stories here, assuming this is the last thing, we have one episode to, like, snap him out of his PTSD to bridge the super duper broken guy in episode 1 and the guy that we saw in episode 4, New Hope. He's not broken down and beaten. He's just been waiting for this moment and he's ready to step into it. But he's just a very different personality from the guy that we saw in the first 3 episodes of this show. We got one episode to bridge that. And they haven't really bridged it. I know there's 10 more years. Like, I know there's more of a time gap. But if you're going to tell this story, if you leave him right now as, like, still, like, broken or whatever, it doesn't work. So you need it to be a 6-episode arc of that transformation, of him regaining, like, figuring out, like, there's other people out there. There is hope. Like, I'm not on a pointless mission. This is going somewhere. But that's not really the story that they've told. And it's not what they've set up in these 5 episodes to be able to pay that off in the 6th episode. There's, like, so much focus on Reva all leading up to a plot twist that I think we all saw coming. That's why it started the way it did with the younglings. And then you have this Inquisitor that doesn't act like the other Inquisitors and is seems very personally motivated. And so, like, I was a youngling. Well, yeah, of course you were. Of course you were there. You were there when Anakin showed up, right? That's where I assumed this was all headed. And likewise assumed she wasn't going to just be a villain. She's going to turn into something else. Like, okay, that's where I assumed all this was headed. And you spent a lot of time on her and her journey and her rage, while never really making her all that compelling to me, while forgetting about Kenobi, the person that I was guess he's over here. Forgetting about Kenobi, the character I was actually interested in you diving into. So, I don't know. I've been really let down by the show. I just think that they put their emphasis on the wrong things. They maybe had a 2-hour compelling movie, but I don't know what that movie would have been exactly. And then they put some filler in here, repeated some plot beats, shockingly bad execution. The chase in episode 1 in the woods with Leia, unbelievably bad. Episode 3, where they go into a roadblock and they're like, how are we going to get around this? Bad. Fire drops in front of Vader and he's like, I guess Kenobi's going to get away. Bad execution. Cool scene, followed by just like, really? That's how you end it? That's how Kenobi's going to get away? Fire on the ground? And then Tala, open hand, slaps a stormtrooper. He falls over. Really? That's in Star Wars? Trench coat with a little girl in it? That's in Star Wars? Like, what are we doing? And then ships can just fly off and no one catches them. It's like this combined with Book of Boba Fett, like my expectations for Book of Boba Fett were lower and it still fell below my low expectations for it. And I went, I don't know, is their bag of trips for TV Star Wars just empty? That it really is just like, hey, look, we're back in this world. Hey, look, it's more of this character. Hey, look, Luke Skywalker showed back up. Is that their one trick that they have? It worked for The Mandalorian, and it kind of fit the story that they were doing, that worked. Just be like, hey, look, it's that guy. Hey, look, it's that person. Look, an Imperial base. Look, Imperial uniforms. Look, rebel fighters. It worked for that show, and it worked. But even then, I was a little bit like, are we just... I was starting to feel a bit like every episode we're just going somewhere to be reunited with a character from Clone Wars or prequels or something. And then Book of Boba Fett was bad until it was just an episode of The Mandalorian, or a couple episodes of The Mandalorian, which felt very like, that's not good. That's a bad sign. And then here, the story's just not compelling. And there's not an arc. It's just, isn't it great to see Kenobi? Look, we're seeing young Leia. Isn't that cool? Did you see that? Vader? He just threw down. Vader just was tearing people up. Vader just stopped the ship. Vader just did that. It's all superficial. Look at that person that I love. That cool character from my childhood. Look, we're seeing prequel era again. Wow. it's cool to see. But like, I want a story that's compelling too. I want depth, meat to it, and I just don't feel this show has that. And it's really discouraging. Like, this was the show I was excited about, and it seems to have the same, like, this is the one that I thought was going to be more narrative based, more character based, like just strong character arcs, big story, because Mandalorian was intentionally episodic due to the nature of the show. And then this is the one that they're like, it's going to be serialized. I don't think it's working the way it's supposed to. Cool moments. That's it. Like, I'm not invested in the story. I'm not worried. Like, I wonder if Leia's going to survive. Well, obviously she is. Well, I wonder if Luke's going to survive. Well, I know he is. I wonder if Obi-Wan's going to survive. Well, I know he is. And then all these other characters, they didn't show up in the original trilogy, so they can't be that important. And I'm definitely not invested in like Reva and her mission journey and motivations. So it's like, okay. We just have this little adventure that is very simple and lacks depth. I wish I wasn't saying that. I wish I was saying something different. I wish I was more positive, but it's not working for me, unfortunately. It's just, it's hollow. I don't want to say that. Anyway, I know some of you guys are loving it. Some of you hate it actually hate it. Like, I don't hate it. I'm fine with it. It's just very, very disappointing. So, and of course, Twitter's discussion of it is as toxic as you'd imagine, where there's a group of people that are going to anyone that's saying that they don't like the shows. You're not a real fan if you don't like Kenobi. You're an awful person if you don't like Reva. That's Twitter. And of course, you have the angry people on the other, toxic fans on the other side too. It's just two sides of toxic fandom just going nuts on the internet. Awesome. Awesome. Congratulations, internets. You're making Star Wars not fun anymore. Join me down below in the comment section. Let me know what you thought. Where do you fall in the spectrum? Love it, hate it, disappointed in the middle like me, or not disappointed, but it's just okay. Where are you at on it? Let me know. We'll come back next week and I'll give my final thoughts on the season. Unfortunately, I'm not hopeful that it's going to win me back. And I'll have a couple rankings afterwards as well. Be sure to come back next week. If you're in the Texas area, come to Dallas Fan Expo. I would love to meet you and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.